Hi everyone and welcome to the Rehab Podiatrist podcast with me, Alex Murray, the Rehab Podiatrist. I'm really excited to have this chat today because it's someone who I think epitomizes doing something different in podiatry that has really taken a lot of opportunities to branch out. And I think there's a lot that we can sort of talk about where people can go with their career, and also for someone who is doing something different in podiatry and how that changes the perspective on how we look at patients, athletes, how we look at our treatments, how we look at our biomechanical theories. Because I think from my perspective, I see a lot of people talk about the opportunities in podiatry and what we can do. And what I generally see, and part of this is the marketplace, part of this is a lack of people out there doing lots of things different and talking about doing things different. But most people go to private practice or they go into public practice and they open similar clinics, do similar treatments, do similar CPD, and nothing wrong with that whatsoever at all, especially if it makes people happy. But at the same time, we see, lots of people leaving the profession. We see lots of people trying to do something different and trying to forge a career for themselves and struggling. So I thought it's really, really good to highlight someone who is taking risks, taking chances and opportunities to do something different and ask, what is going on? Like, how did you get this? And really push that out to people who might be wondering, what else can I do in podiatry? Can I go work with teams? Can I go work with athletes? Can I go do something very, very different? So I'll introduce him now, Angelo. I won't speak for you. I want to hear from yourself a bit about, well, you explain for yourself, who you are, what you're doing, where you are currently.
Sounds good. So I'm Angelo. I'm based in Perth in Western Australia. So for me, I've been a podiatrist for 9 years and I specialise predominantly with kids and with sports injuries. So currently I'm the consultant podiatrist for a Rhythmic Gymnastics Academy. I consult with Gymnastics WA with a lot of their state team athletes and with WA Youth Ballet as well. And then I also consult with one of the WAFL teams, the Perth Demons in Perth. So yeah, keep myself busy with a variety of different sports teams, definitely.
Yeah, so you're in private practice. You've got
Yeah,
your own
private practice.
clinic.
Yeah, that's right. So we opened up at the start of the year. So our clinic started off as a paediatric clinic only. So we dealt predominantly from birth to about 4 years of age, working in a multi-disc practice. But obviously with peds, it can be hard to build a caseload. It was during COVID, so it was just a bit of a mess the last couple of years. So me and the physio sat down and said, well, let's just look at opening up a sports clinic. And so we started up at the start of the year in a new practice and a new premises and a new sort of model as well.
So talk to me about how, because like immediately younger podiatrists opening clinics, really heavy specialized focus. A lot of the experience a lot of people have is, you've got to do routine care, you've got to do general care, or you've got to be, doing your time in the trenches, so to speak.
Yeah.
But you've sort of dived right in. Can you talk about your experience? Like what was different in terms of what got you there quite quickly and working with others?
I think the thing for me is that as a young grad, I always had an idea of being able to open up my own practice and have my own business opportunity. But for me, it was just biding my time and wanting to learn everything there was possibly to do with podiatry first, so I can focus purely on being a practitioner and being the best practitioner for patients as well. So, it took a lot of time, a lot of learning, a lot of conferences, a lot of PDs, going out to various people and talking to them, spending time with people, a lot of time, for free, trying to discuss and learn. And it was only sort of probably last year I finally felt confident enough to go out and open up my own practice while being a practitioner at the same time. Um, but yeah, for me, it was just a matter of building up my caseload, building up my confidence, building up my skill set as a podiatrist, and just focusing purely on that for the first couple of years, or for the first 8 years of my career, really.
There was something you said at the start, and I got to start writing as we go.
That's all right.
Yeah, so like you talk about, giving away your time for free in a way, or like being available, being open to opportunity. Um, I guess a different way to look at that is that you're spending your time learning, getting other people's experience, getting yourself experience, because you had that goal of opening your own clinic, of having a space that was yours, and now you're sort of getting that payment back, or that reward from that time spent previously. Is like a different way of looking at, giving away time for free.
That's right. And I think the biggest thing is you see a lot of people come out of uni and they, look, for me, I was a 20-year-old kid. I had no partner, I had no kids at the time. So I was looking at my career and going, well, why not try and make a big name for myself and try and learn and be the best possible version of a podiatrist I can possibly be? I didn't know where my career was going to go in terms of the sports or in terms of the kids or any sort of specialized region, but I just wanted to be the best possible podiatrist I could be. And so that's why for me, I had the capacity to go and spend time with different sports teams, go and spend time with various physios, chiros, podiatrists that were in an area that I wanted to eventually get to, I guess. But yeah, I think the hard part is you see a lot of people come out and they want to do the business side of stuff very early. And I think a lot of people forget that you also need to be a podiatrist. You need to be able to treat, you need to be able to diagnose, you need to be able to look after people as well. And it is extremely hard trying to learn that side of stuff and learn the business side of stuff at the same time. And that's often where, people lose that ability to be both at the same time.
Mm. I guess I can. We're sort of in similar boats in a lot of ways, where me starting up my own business as well, and sort of reaching that point, biding time, getting confidence. Some of it was getting confidence in the business stuff to be able to go out.
Yeah.
But yeah, once you start,
A lot of late
every
nights.
every minute just gets like eaten up by like, oh, call this person back. Oh, this has happened. Oh, we got to train reception. Oh, I'm trying to get a phone line fixed, and it's like constant calls and emails. It really does chew up. So that's like a very, very sort of interesting point, that if you do start business early, I guess it just depends if that's the right move that someone wants to make with the skill set they have at the time.
That's right. And
Totally.
it comes down to where you see your career, where you envisage yourself. If you're happy just doing routine care and just being more of a general podiatrist, then yeah, absolutely. But I think when you're working in more of a focused, specialized area, it's good to try and get as much knowledge about that early before going out into the business side of stuff, because you forget how little things can play a part. You get a phone call about the internet going down or phone lines going down or someone's sick, and so all of a sudden you've got to start playing around with your diary, you've got to start shifting patients. And the problem is, it's not necessarily you that suffers, but it's the patient that suffers, it's the business that suffers. And it can be difficult trying to build up both at the same time. Definitely.
Mm. Well, the other thing that you're sort of talking about as well is being in a space where you had the time, you had the effort, you had the energy to be able to go out and take advantage of opportunities to go and learn. And I guess that's kind of bringing a bit of reality in, is that it is to get to a space where you are working with a lot more teams, you're working in sport, you're getting the experience and the confidence to be able to go into this area, start a private practice with a very narrow, specific focus. You have to have had that time in a way to get to that point. Is that something you'd agree with?
Absolutely, yeah. And when people speak to me, we get a lot of new grads coming into the doors to do practice with us. And the way I always sort of describe it is, it's like an athlete's career. You start your career as a new recruit. You got to bide your time. You got to learn how to be, let's say, an AFL player. You've got to learn the systems. You've got to learn, the skills of being an AFL player, and then you develop that over multiple years. But the reality is, for a lot of professional athletes, they don't hit the peak of their career until 6, 7, 8 years into it starting. And so that's how I often describe, I think any sort of professional workplace, it takes time to build that skill set up and eventually be able to get to an area where you're 100% confident in what you're doing all the time.
It's almost like you had sort of, because you knew where you wanted to go, or at least had an idea of having a business, having somewhere to go,
Yeah.
you had that from that start, that you were investing for that future, because that's a very business based sort of focused way of looking at it. We're no longer looking at ourselves as PAYG employees, that everything we do we get paid and we get come back. It's you make investments, you do something now, so 3, 4, 5, 6 years time it pays off. And that's not all the way always the way that we think, and always encouraged, because we're always sort of talking about, I spend this time, I get this money back. But it's sort of a good shift.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, look, some of the patients I saw from 6, 7, 8 years ago, I might not necessarily still see that patient, but it's their family members, it's their friends, it's their extended network that they referred to me as well. So it's all those little things that have a big part to play. Like, my number is pretty open for a lot of my patients, and same with my emails. So I'll get text messages, emails at all times of the day about all sorts of questions. And just having that, for me, having that space to be available for people has allowed my network just to exponentially grow over the years. And so, yeah, definitely now starting to reap the rewards of that. You see some footy boys from 3, 4, 5 years ago, they've retired, but their kids or their family members, they're referring to you as well, because they remember the little things that you do to go out the way for them, whether it be to pop down to the club or to see them after hours, or even just squeezing them into appointments that might not necessarily be available all the time. So yeah, it was always for me, looking back, I didn't necessarily think about, the focus wasn't about just getting to the business side of stuff, but just building my network and just being available. And that's how I've always prided myself on being a podiatrist, just being available for my patients when they need me. Because, especially when you look at pain and you look at injuries, a lot of people are going through a new injury, a lot of people are going through pain. And sometimes you see someone, they don't necessarily get it. They just see you as, let's get you in, let's get you better, and kick you out the door. Whereas I guess for me, I look at it more as pain is very, very subjective. So if you need me, give me an email, give me a call. We'll talk about it outside of hours, and then grow from there.
It's interesting, because I guess we were talking before we started about relationships. And the other podcast I have is with a Comey psychotherapy trained physiotherapist, and her whole approach is based around focusing on the relationships you develop, because she deals with more complex clients and more people with significant histories, often lots of trauma, neurodiversity, and it is almost like the focus is on the relationship. And we can think about that as being sort of over there, that's for the complex people, but it's kind of almost exactly what you've done and how you've built a reputation, is focusing on the relationship and having something that's not feeling very transactional, because that's almost kind of what you're hinting at, right? With appointments where it's like come in, out, it's like it's very transactional. You have this time with me, that's what you're paying me for, and then off you go.
That's right. And yeah, that's the thing. I'm more than happy to, if I run 5-10 minutes late with someone, I run 5-10 minutes late. But I say to them, and I think I haven't got kids, I haven't got a family myself. But you talk to parents, you talk to some mums and dads who've got 3, 4 kids, and you're trying to talk to them about their kids' pain or about their pain, and their processing time in that appointment's very, very minimal. And so you're always aware that what you say to them in that appointment, they don't necessarily take away with them half an hour later. So that's why I always say to them, flick me an email, or give me a call if you've got any questions, or whatever it might be, or come in at a time that suits you, and we'll actually sit down and discuss everything in depth. So yeah, in a way, I've never really looked at it as a transactional. I've reaped the benefits of that definitely now, in terms of the financial side of stuff. But initially, I never look at it as a patient as a financial object. It's just being there and looking after that person in front of you as much as you can.
Yeah, I guess sort of, because we sort of got that sort of business side. I think that's a really good sort of acumen for where you want it to go. It's not saying right or wrong. It's not saying it's the only way to do it or the best way to do it. But for what you're doing, because there are many business circumstances where I can see that, and the type of patients where if you're giving away that time, it might not always come back. I guess I'm thinking, going and focusing on how you got to a position with gymnastics, focusing with the position how you got with sports teams, like the Demons, that's the Western Australian Football League Demons. I'm guessing not
Yeah,
the Melbourne.
I wish.
It would be a wild thing for them to send all their players out to Perth.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's sort of how you gone to that position, and I guess part of what I'm thinking about is how we've talked about previously, that you've been in a different situation working with physios and doing things differently than most.
Yeah, that's right. So, when I first started my career, I did work under a podiatrist for 3 or 4 months. But after that, I ended up just working under physios for the rest of my career. So for the last 7, 8 years, I've pretty much always exclusively worked alongside a big group of physios. And I've learnt most of the trade from a physio perspective as well. So I guess that's where my interest in sports, my interest in sports teams started to pick up. Because I was seeing all these physios, going out and treating all these athletes, spending time with sports teams, traveling with them. And it's always funny because you talk to a physio and then some physios are very, very confident with foot and ankle, but the majority of them sort of wing it a little bit as well. So I was looking and going, well, hang on, I know foot and ankle. That is my bread and butter. I know everything there is to about foot and ankle. I know the injuries. I know the processes. I know, how this should be treated. And so over the years, I was like, well, why can't I do that? Why can't I go to a sports team and treat their injuries? And, being a pod, you do get to see a lot of knee pain. You start to see a lot of hip pain, especially with some of the athletic population that we treat. So probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I started to diversify myself into a lot more knee injuries and how that occurs and how they are rehabbed, and the biomechanical side of stuff. So I learned a lot more from sports medicine in terms of the biomechanics of the lower limb, which all just helped me when I did approach a sports team to go, hang on, I can treat foot and ankle, but if you need to, I can also treat a hip, I can treat a knee, I can treat any sort of soft tissue injury in between. So yeah, over the years, I decided to make a big push for the sports teams. And going back to what I said before, because I'm so available, because I make time for people, the sports teams love the fact that I can just come down. They don't have to worry about paying me. They don't have to worry about, trying to lock me into a time. I can pop in and out as I need to. I can see their boys. I can take some tape down just to have a chat to the coach, have a chat to the player, and come up with an action plan for them. And then from there, if they want to book into clinic, they can come into clinic. Which has worked really well for gymnastics for us. So obviously gymnastics being a predominantly younger population, being able to go down to a club, speak to a coach, speak to their parents, speak to the athlete, has formed this little nook and this little hub around the athlete. So any niggles, any injuries, anything they go through, they can contact all of us at any given time. So it's been an interesting area being a podiatrist in that field. And you do get a little bit of knockback initially. People go, "Oh, you're a podiatrist. All you do is orthotics, or all you do is corns and calluses and ingrowns." But once I actually spent more time there, and I reported back to the coaches and the athletes, they started to see why I might also be a slightly better option or an alternative to having a physio there.
It's almost like, because we have really different business models. So I work with physios too, and it's interesting from both a practitioner perspective, those working with sports teams, and then also just seeing their business models and their marketing and everything they got behind it. It's vastly different, not better, just different. And I guess what you're highlighting is that to get these opportunities, like physio has adapted and has these different ways of working and thinking and investing in sports teams and time and going out and visiting them, and they're looking at as the investment for essentially future opportunities, looking as an investment for being able to have the reputation of being someone who treats athletes who you're picking up. You're using that as your marketing, so rather than spending marketing dollars, your marketing dollars is much more locked in. And I'm guessing as well there's some advertising benefits as well if you guys say, well, look, we're available pretty much almost 24/7 in a way to help you guys out. Can you guys help us out with things that are free for them with the marketing? It just opens up those opportunities, because there's so many podiatrists out there who leave uni that go, I want to work in a sports team, or I want to work with athletes, I want to learn how to do all this. and they're almost relying on going into businesses that have established contracts or ideas, and it's sort of an accidental gatekeeping in that way, because it's like, well, I'm not ready, or I'm not good enough, or I shouldn't be doing that, when really what you're saying is, if there's a local club that you could help out, I mean, there's your ground to go and talk to someone, learn about the business, learn about the business of sport and how it all works, and get your experience that way, get athletes, and then sort of start to build.
That's right. Because to be fair, you look at a lot of sports clubs, and I think the perception is that sports clubs are the ones that go out and source those people for the club. But the reality is, most clubs are very, very busy looking after the club. You know, most of them are a volunteer basis. So the board and the president, whoever it is just so busy trying to keep the club running and keep the players happy that all those external services are not often thought about. So, you know, going out and introducing yourself, offering to spend a little bit of time there, it just opens up those little doors here and there for them to then approach you and say, hey, look, why don't you come on board on a more permanent basis, or why don't we have you as part of the club in a more official basis? See, I think from a podiatry perspective, especially if you get stuck working for a podiatry clinic as well, a lot of pod clinics don't necessarily have those relationships with the sports clubs already in place. And the reality is, for business owners, obviously you know this as well, as a business owner, you're so busy looking after staff, you're so busy looking after the clinic and keeping that afloat. You know, if you want a sports team, that's the lowest of our priorities. So being able to come up with that confidence yourself, being able to have the plan yourself to approach a sports team, is probably the best way to go as a podiatrist looking to progress into the sporting field. And don't be afraid, you will get a few knockbacks here and there. You know, you'll have people that won't email you back or won't get back to you for a couple of weeks. Don't worry about it. Flick another email through. Just, you know, it's that second, third point of contact. And again, it just shows that you're available and you want that position.
It's recognizing that you've got, the sport really is like, it is sort of held together, especially at lower levels. It's held together with duct tape.
Yeah.
And expecting people to sort of email you back or be sitting in an office and that sort of thing, being like, oh great, yes, you know, we're going to think about this. It's putting out fires left, right and center and trying to keep the whole train moving. And I guess you've just got to be ready to finish that analogy. You've got to be ready to sort of run alongside and jump on and make things easy.
Yeah. Obviously, as you progress, as you start to build into the more semi-professional and professional teams, processes do get a little bit easier. But at the same time, a professional sports team has so many staff members that all those external services, again, sort of still get forgotten about. I think just being aware that we can't expect things to be given to you as well. As a new grad, if you want those positions, you know, when you're at uni, try and make some contacts early on. It's always good to do a level 1, level 2 sports trainer. Because again, physios have the stranglehold on those sports trainer positions as well. Whereas there's no reason for a podiatrist not to be able to deal with those sort of niggles, to be able to deal with concussions as well. It's not in your field as a podiatrist, but it's in your field as a sports trainer to be able to work on those sort of injuries as well. And gain that experience, gain the opportunity to go alongside a sports team. And so that's what we're trying to push here. So for me especially, we're trying to encourage our podiatry students to do their level 1 and level 2 sports trainer courses, so that they have an opportunity to then come to Gymnastics WA events and deal with injuries and see what it's like being in a professional environment as well.
It's interesting, because you can sort of see that as an in, because having been in rugby, like, there's always need for sports trainers, and some of them are paid positions as well, which is nice. But there's always need for someone, and if you roll up as someone who's not, you know, a volunteer to the club, or like someone who's just sort of not having much medical experience and is sort of doing the course to sort of help out, it's not to sort of knock them back, but you know, you do get there's a bonus on top of getting someone like that to come in, who has a bit more knowledge, has a bit more experience, who can sort of fit in a bit more, you know, rather than potentially always like Bob, who's got maybe some interesting ideas about how injuries heal.
Because yes, you look at the sports level one courses and the jobs available, and a lot of them target the physios, the chiros, the exercise physiologists, the sports science students. But at the same time, there's no reason why podiatry can't be included in that. We learn so much about biomechanics, we learn so much about anatomy. Like I said, we are technically the foot and ankle experts. So there's no reason why we can't start changing that perception early on in young grads' careers, whether it's first, second, third year podiatry, and start going out and doing the sports level one courses, because that's how you start to build your network of contacts as well. You meet the coaches, you meet the players, you start to form a bond with them over 2, 3 seasons, and when you graduate, the person that they'll think of as their podiatrist will be you off the bat.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it's for me. A lot of it has been looking at how the physios have operated for the last 9 years of my career, and going, well, why can't I do that as well? There's no reason why I can't treat a foot and ankle for an athlete. And what you sort of realize as well is that when it comes to sports clubs, the physios are really good at dealing with the injury when it happens, but the biomechanical side of stuff is where it breaks down. So the repeat injuries, the repeat ankle sprains, the repeat hamstring injuries. And so that's where my role is changing a little bit, because I get to work a bit more on the biomechanics of the athlete. We get to look at them run, we get to change their running form, we get to change their boots, we get to change, the strength program for them, and integrate a bit more foot and ankle specific stuff, which is again where my area of expertise is.
It's interesting because when you, and I think I think it's Joe Morton on Instagram has just been sort of pushing this point a lot in his sort of stuff, is where like physios generally focus on movements, they don't focus on forces.
Yeah.
And forces are a key component of what influences movement, but also what will influence an injury. Something can look the same and be really different force wise, which is going to affect the injury. And I guess that sort of is a skill set, or really just a background that we have. And it very much leans into this idea of transdisciplinary care. Is this something when I say transdisciplinary care, is that something that a term that you recognise or know much about?
No, not really. No.
Well, because it's funny because you're kind of doing it. So, well, and I think this is like a key thing, which is what we're sort of identifying in pretty much any one person, is that you don't have a skill, like you can have a basis in a training in a skill set, but ultimately you're developing the skills that are required for where you want to end up, for what you want to do. So you're getting your sports trainer, you're learning about things that can help with the club, or you're learning about things that are outside of your first scope, so you can be more of a rounded individual.
Yeah.
And benefit the club. And that's ultimately, clubs and athletes hate someone who's just doing a tiny little piece.
Yeah.
And what transdisciplinary care is an idea compared to multidisciplinary being you're doing that, you're going to each individual person, and each individual person has a skill set, and you specifically take a bit of that, you take a bit of this, but ultimately you're kind of working amongst 3, 4, 5 people, each with their own little bit, and there's not a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
Whereas transdisciplinary care is sort of saying, if you think of a Venn diagram, multidisciplinary is everyone's separate, but in transdisciplinary care, everyone is kind of sharing part of it, and there's common skill sets between individuals. So, if someone comes to see you with an ankle injury, potentially the physio would also have similar skill sets to do that, and there's shared sort of knowledge in between.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
you've got these two different backgrounds, which, while you might be doing the same care, might also influence your thought process, the way that you treat it. Maybe you offer different skills, different things, but ultimately someone can still get similar services from you in a lot. And I think a lot of people see it as threatening. It's been a lot more in like social work and in mental health care, where we see like OTs work alongside psychologists, and they have really similar skill sets, where and social work, where they'll be working with the same people with using psychological techniques, but you have someone there who's trained in psychopathology, you have someone there who's trained in people from a social perspective, or from an occupational perspective or like how do you get them back to life, and you've got these viewpoints that kind of change. And I guess that's exactly what you're doing, your physios are doing, everyone's doing, is going, we can just do
right. Yeah, because the good thing for me is over the years I've surrounded myself with a really, really, really good basis of physios, podiatrists, chiros, doctors, sports docs, who all recognise, I'm more than happy for them to treat lower limb injuries. That's not a problem for me. I'll educate them, they educate me. We're constantly bouncing ideas off each other, but they also really are good at recognising my specific skill set, which is a lot of the biomechanical side of stuff. Or if they get one that they just can't quite get on top of, or they're having repeat injuries, that's when they can go, hang on, Angelo actually, might know a bit more than I would. Let's send them off. So yeah, building up a network of people that I can trust, building up a network or I guess myself being able to be trusted by other health practitioners as well, has been super important for me. I've tried not to badmouth or talk anyone down too much in my career. It does happen occasionally when you get the but yeah, just trying to surround myself by people who we can all recognise our specific skill sets, we can all recognise what we're better at, and sharing that patient around to see who can get the best possible outcome for that patient. And I guess, to be fair, the people that I'm referring to are people in similar positions to me, where they're not necessarily business minded or looking at that person as a financial measure. It's just, we've got a person in front of us, we need to get them better, we need to get them active, we need to get them moving. Who is the best person to see for that?
It's interesting because we're sort of having this discussion in the wake of the controversy with physios and exercise physiologists over ownership of who owns what and what happens. And I think we see that in podiatry as well, where people are like, we own the foot and ankle, or we should own footwear, or we should own orthotics, and that should be exclusive to us. And I don't disagree that as a basis of our training, we have potentially more ingrained skill sets that would help us do better. If you just took a standard podiatrist, there's probably going to be, with some of those skill sets, the podiatrist coming out on top. But a key sort of part of, what you're saying is your success is going, well, I'm not owning it. I'm working as a team with people. We're recognizing strengths, and we're moving kind of beyond, and this is transdisciplinary. We're moving beyond just me as a podiatrist with the title podiatrist to me as a person with a set of skill sets. I've got my license that treats, and ultimately it's kind of very funny because you look at the registration, the APRA documents, and they say, what can we do? What's your scope of practice? And there's caveats in there for, if you are trained to a competent standard, you can do treatments. Yeah. And there's a lot of grey area about what's competent. Yeah. But it's recognizing the fact that, we will have this license that will give us these skills, but we can learn more, do more, and be able to offer more. And in the same way, other people can do the same thing. And we look at us as this person as an individual podiatrist with an individual skill set, with an individual experience that we consult with, rather than saying, I'm off to see, we recognize this, like I'm off to see an orthopedic surgeon. You kind of go, well, I'm not seeing any orthopedic surgeon. I want to see the orthopedic surgeon that does the specific injuries that I do, that does the surgery that I'm potentially looking at, has the reputation that I value, works with people that I know that have had good experiences. Yeah, it's sort of, it just seems like it's the much better way of going about it.
Absolutely. And for me, I'm more than happy to sit down and educate people as well about foot and ankle. And I'm still learning a lot more about a lot of different things in the lower limb as well. I'm dealing a lot more hip pain, but I'm still learning about hip pain and hip injuries and how they present and how they work biomechanically. But when it comes to foot and ankle stuff, if we do get a referral from a physio or another podiatrist, whoever it is, I'll always write a letter back to them, and I'll educate them as to how it's going on. And I think that's where some of my success has been on social media as well, because people have seen some of the stuff I'm doing and they want to learn how to do it as well. They want to learn how to have an athlete come in and how to look after them from the start to the end, rather than having to rely on the physio as well. So it has been really fascinating for me being able to do that sort of stuff. So, you get the odd one. I had one recently that was a really nasty syndesmosis injury. But the problem is the physio who was treating it had missed the syndesmosis. And so he was trying to rehab and trying to push this patient past what they were capable of. Mm-hmm. So the patient came to see me, and we sort of broke it all down, booted her, and 2 weeks later the pain had settled down. But it was just recognizing the injury. He was a new grad. Look, to be fair, he was a new physio. So I called them and I said, look, this is what's going on. This is what I've picked up during the assessment. And there's some people push back and they go, oh, well, you shouldn't be doing that. Don't call me again. But you get the odd one that actually wants to sit down and go, all right, how do I recognize this next time? If I have this present again, what's the signs? What sort of history should I be asking? So yeah, just trying to educate people as much as I possibly can do as well about what I'm good at.
It's funny because I read something the other day, and it was essentially being share your secrets. Don't hold them. And I think that's kind of the natural tendency, right? I have these secrets, I've worked hard for them. Don't share them. People have to, it's locked behind a paywall, or you have to come and see me to get them and have to be paid. But what this is saying is screw that. We talked about restaurants. How many restaurants have put out a recipe book?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But do their recipe, if anything, it makes their restaurant more popular, even though
That's
you can
right.
make it at home.
They'll always keep that one secret ingredient hidden. That's all they need. So you always just keep a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of the process. But end of the day, there's enough patients to go around in Australia for every practitioner. So for me, there's no point holding on to someone just for the sake of it. If someone else is just as competent as I am, and look, I don't know what's going to happen to my career tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen to my career in a year's time. You might have an injury, you might end up going on holiday, things change very quickly. So while I've got the capacity to, and while I can, I want to educate, I want to teach, I want to share what I've got as much as I possibly can do, to I guess progress not just podiatry but healthcare as much as I can as well.
And it just goes back to, I mean, so much of everything it keeps going back to is just relationships. Every if we're just thinking and shifting that focus from me to, in as an individual, to how do you talk to people, build relationships, and you sort of, everything comes as like an investment. You're not going to get that one-to-one. If this is where you want to go and this is what you want to do, it just seems like, everything just keeps coming back to that.
Yeah, exactly. I guess the crux of it is that's how I've always just based my career on, is forming relationships, maintaining relationships, talking to people on a regular basis, trying to badmouth too many people at one time. Yep.
It's fair. Sometimes you resist the temptation.
It's tough sometimes.
Well, it's so hard because sometimes you see someone and they just tell you a very different story than what they've told everyone else. So there is a little bit of humility to be like, hold on a second.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I guess if we change gears a little bit, I kind of want to draw or ask you some questions and draw out some of your knowledge on, or experience really, with working with gymnastics and dancers specifically, because we do have some people that work in dance in podiatry, but it's sort of it's not something that I see a lot spoken about. It's not something that I see a lot of focus on, and I'm interested because you're sort of going between two very different worlds. People that wear shoes all the time, that wear boots, you're going to think about orthotics, you're going to think about studs, you're going to think about all that sort of stuff. They move there, and then you're looking at dancers and people who will not wear shoes. And gymnasts. I guess to start off with, what had to change, or what do you notice is changing with your thinking, or maybe it hasn't changed, having those experiences and thinking about traditional things that we're taught in podiatry, way we're traditionally taught to approach patients?
Yeah, it was funny because I was actually thinking about this the other day when I was talking to another podiatrist. I think my whole career, I didn't really realise this, but my whole career was sort of going towards the barefoot sports to begin with. Because from the get-go, I was never much of an orthotic person to begin with. Because for me, coming from a sports background, coming from a semi-professional sporting background, it was always, how can we get you stronger? How can we get you fitter? How can we get you on top of your injuries? And so for me, for most of my career, I haven't really been focusing on the orthotic side of stuff. That's always been the very, very, very last treatment option for me. You get the odd one here and there that does need a pair of orthotics, but for me, usually when I get people coming through the door, it's what's the injury, what's in play, what's biomechanically deficient, and how can we deal with those injuries to make you stronger and get on top of your pain. And so over the years, I started to move into more ballet, started to move into more the dance, more into gymnastics, and I was realizing I don't need to put orthotics into these people at all. I can just keep working the same way I work. You know, you get the flexor hallucis tendinopathies, you get Achilles tendinopathies, a lot of post-tib irritations. Let's get them stronger. Let's get them more functional from foot and ankle. And obviously, a lot of these are kids. So these are kids ranging between 9 to 15, 16 years of age. So they're still developing, they're still growing, they're still, I guess, developing as well. So how can we speed that up? How can we integrate some strength and conditioning into their programming to make them a better athlete? So to be fair, I haven't really changed the way I thought too much. I think it's just always been heading down this direction. I just didn't realize it until the last 12 months. um,
Would you say though it's part of it is, you know, you have that viewpoint not because that's the one truth about foot orthotics and things, but it's more of what the skills you've had and the patients there therefore that you attract that may so that orthotics are maybe a much more last consideration.
That's right, yeah, because you do a fair bit of chronic pain as well. You see a lot of rheumatoid. You see some of the middle-aged people that have some plantar fascia conditions that just don't want to do their rehab, and so they're the ones that you sort of go, all right, footwear, orthotics. Let's incorporate some strength stuff here and there. But yeah, I think I've always just attracted that clientele that actually wants to improve on their performance, that wants to get stronger, that wants to learn more about how to use their foot and ankle in their sport as well. So yeah, in a way, I have attracted those sort of clients, and I don't think I'll do too well just going back to more chronic pain side of stuff anymore, because my basis as a practitioner is to try and get people fitter, stronger, more developed, and get on top of their injuries through exercise more than anything else. So even going to footwear, I used to be a big person to adjust footwear off the bat. You know, it's something that I used to do all the time. You got a pair of crappy Skechers, let's get rid of them, let's get into some proper shoes. Whereas now, in the last couple of years, I've gone away from looking at the footwear as much, focusing more on the biomechanics, and then using that footwear as a last option if we need to make any adjustments to it as well.
Sacrilege.
Yeah, I know. Burn me at the altar.
Well, I think it's something that I wanted to draw out because not because we've specifically chatted about that, but because it's something that sort of I thought you'd have some interesting thoughts on, because I guess, you know, thinking about what you're saying, where it's like, you know, people that want to do their rehab, people that want to get better. I mean, I would always push back and say there are always times where orthotics going to be the best option, where footwear is going to be a really good option, where, you know, holding these things back on this idea that you need to exercise rehab, like it doesn't sit well with me ethically to be able to say no. And I guess that's the sort of that's the line that we're sort of drawing though with yourself, where you're going, I am working with these people. I have a business model that's set up about my interests,
Yeah.
about, you know, what you know, I say but what you would want to be doing, who you want to be seeing, how you want to be practicing, and it's sort of developing in that direction rather than having to really trying to jam, you know, treatments and things. And I guess this is about sport as well, jamming the treatments that you traditionally believe in because of the background as podiatrists, footwear and orthotics, into a field that can't use them, doesn't wear them.
Yeah, exactly. And look, for our young gymnasts, we do still pay attention to footwear, because they're at school 7-8 hours a day. They then come and do a barefoot sport. So we do pay a little bit of attention to footwear in those sort of cases, because they do suffer from a lot of overuse injuries in their foot and ankle. We've got a couple of Lisfranc injuries that we're dealing with at the moment. We get a couple of accessory naviculars, accessory osteogonums. So they're the ones that we really look after their foot and ankle strength inside the gymnastic space. But at school, we've got to still go through the usual protocols to look after that foot, look after that ankle, look after the injury. So to be fair, I still do some sort of footwear and orthotic therapy for them, but it's not the crux of the treatment. The crux of the treatment is the strength side of stuff more so. And I think a lot of it comes down to who you've got in front of you. You know, you sort of, after a couple of years and after seeing however many patients you see, generally by the time you've spoken to that patient in the first 10-15 minutes of the consult, you sort of know already what sort of position you're going to take with them. You get some that come in that might not necessarily be exercising. They don't want to exercise. They just got some pain that they want to get rid of. So you go, well, there's no point in me giving you exercises because you're going to come back in a week's time and tell me you've done nothing and you'll still be in pain. You're going to go somewhere else. So those sort of people, you sort of recognize in that initial consultation, you have a chat to them about their history, about their goals, what they want to achieve, what they hope to get out of your consult. And that is what sort of forms your form of treating. So there's definitely still cases where it's footwear and orthotics as the main form of treatment. I'll chuck in some strength stuff and I'll educate them about the strength stuff. If they do it, awesome. They'll usually come back, and because we've got the gym, they'll come back and say, oh look, I've actually enjoyed these exercises, what more can you give me? So we'll progress it, we'll start to go into some weighted exercises, and 2-3 months down the track, all of a sudden they want to start working out. So you can still change the mindset of people by presenting them all the options available to them. It doesn't always happen, but yeah.
Well, I guess that kind of is a point, right, where we have this focus in medical, and this is the way that like our evidence works, and I'm a broken record about a lot of this sort of stuff, so I won't go into it, but with this idea of identifying like one truth, what is the absolute truth. And I think when you're coming out as a new grad and you're trying to learn a lot more and you're trying to do expand your knowledge, a lot of the focus is on what is the right answer, what is the correct thing to do. And I guess what I like about having these types of discussions is we're bringing in the idea of nuance, and we're also bringing in that there's many different truths for each individual, and you're exactly able to acknowledge that, and you go, this is what I do, this is my skill set, this is where I am, and this is the types of patients I'm going to see. And in a way, you've evolved over time with the patients that you see and what you do. It's been sustainable in terms of the constant direction. So it's also not a way of you going from one to the other, which is kind of when we're presented with two opinions. You're presented with one against the other, and we're sort of not seeing, again, it was also like with our patients, we're not seeing the context behind that. Yeah. Some patients come in, I'm not going to have an orthotic, I don't want to change my shoes. We just see that position versus our position of truth of, well, but I see they help a lot, and we sort of clash rather than seeing the nuance, the context, the experience.
That's right. I think the hard part is everything we learn is heavily evidence driven, but when you actually start working as a practitioner, you've got to realize that people are coming to see you because they're in pain, and pain is such a subjective thing that evidence doesn't necessarily take into account the social aspects, the psychosocial aspects of patients. And so that's where you've got to sort of recognize that there's lots of different modalities available. It's just picking and choosing which ones are the right ones at the right time for that patient. Initially they might respond really well to that footwear, to the orthotic side of stuff, but eventually, you might develop a new injury, you might develop a new niggle. What do? Do you keep adapting the foot and the orthotic side of stuff, or do you go, well, there might actually be another component to this, so let's now try a little bit of this, let's try some strength stuff and see how we go. And taking into account people's social life, people's family life, I think that's where, for me, the evidence doesn't take into account that aspect of a patient.
And I guess I would push back on that just a little bit, not because I disagree, but in a way of saying, we're characterizing evidence as, not covering it. I think it's just what we've prioritized in evidence.
That's
there
right.
are experience-based measures. There are qualitative study measures. We do have some really good, limited but really good qualitative studies. I think I can think of one in the Achilles. We've all got a whole bunch of heap in chronic pain. But I remember the one in the Achilles being like, this hurts. And this is limiting and it's frustrating. I just went to SMA and we're talking about the subjective experience of ankle osteoarthritis, especially post-traumatic ankle osteoarthritis.
Yeah, right.
And all these people are like frustrated as all hell. That was the thing that kept coming up. People are frustrated, they can't do what they want. People are frustrated because they're struggling. People are frustrated because their stiffness is stopping them.
Yeah.
And it's never about the pain per se and reducing the pain, or it might be for some individuals, but it just ironically kept coming up in that evidence because that's what they focused on. And then we're like, oh, maybe we need to focus on how we increase function. And that was like the whole outcome of the set of studies was we can give them exercises.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I didn't know that. That's awesome. That's really good to know. I'll have to look into that one. But yeah, I guess that's again where you look at go, well, if stiffness is the main concern for you, soft tissue, you mobilize it, do some soft tissue work, do some dry needling. Surely evidence doesn't necessarily say that, and that's why there's some people on Instagram that do my head in when they say that soft tissue means nothing. But end of the day, anything can help a patient with pain, with what they want to achieve. I think it comes down to when a patient comes into your rooms, also not just focusing on what they're presenting with, but what their outcome is, what they expect to achieve
Mm.
from treatment. Some people it might just purely be the pain aspect of an injury, but for some people it might be, hey, this has been limiting my running for 2 years, 3 years. I actually wouldn't mind being able to go for a jog or go for a run, and to be able to then adapt your treatment protocol and your management plan around that aspect as well.
That's the other side. Like, we don't see the context taken into account in a lot of studies, in the sense that if you've got an athlete who you're there and you can do something for them in 5-10 minutes, it's not in a consult. So they're also in a way not paying for it. And I guess that leads to the second point, which is looking at what's most cost effective. So it's making a value judgment on the basis of the patient. We go, well, I remember one study, for Achilles tendinopathy, 10 massages is equal to 1 education session about exercise.
Yeah.
Well, someone might want 10 massages.
Yeah, exactly.
They are equivalent.
Yeah, that's all right. You do get those people that they've come in, you've given them exercises, you've given them a little bit of release, and they come back and they go, I just want a massage for the next couple of weeks. I'm just going to put myself in. I'll get a few ladies, like especially a lot of my housewives in particular, they tend to have a lot of plantar fascia and flexor hallucis type injuries and overuse pains. And they literally come this time of the year when they start to go more barefoot around the house, they'll book in twice a week for 3-4 weeks, get it all released, come in for a chat, and that's it. That's all they want. They don't care about doing any sort of exercise at home, because to be fair, they've got 2, 3, 4 kids to look after as well. So for them, this is just a little break for them. They get to come in and have a chat and chat shit for half an hour with me.
I guess so much of it is about how you're selling it, what you're doing, like, for the person overall. You're not selling them on some bullshit model about fascial trains and a bunch of other stuff. You're just going, we're massaging and making it feel better. And there might be more work to do, but they're actively making a choice and they're being autonomous.
That's right, yeah. And as long as you present them all the options available to them, we always tell them that we can do some exercise at home, we can do some footwear or some sandal modifications. If they choose to go down one path, then there's no point trying to turn their mind. They're more than happy to come in and see you every couple of weeks for a massage, then that's fine for me.
But they're informed.
They're informed, that's right, yeah. They're aware of what else they can do. They're aware that we have got the option to give them some exercises. They're aware that we can go through some sandals they can wear at home. If they don't want to, I'm not going to force them to do it. But it's something that I will remind them of, each time they come in, just making sure that they're aware. Because again, people come in, they come in for the consult. As soon as they walk out the door, they've forgotten half the stuff you're talking about as well. So just be able to reiterate that each time and just say, look, there's more stuff we can do. If you don't want to do it, that's fine.
But it's also having that relationship there, those points in time where you can sit there and someone comes back and they might have changed their mind. They might have gotten fed up. Something else could have shifted in their life. And they're like, I'm ready now to discuss this. Or it's so good that you've mentioned it.
Yeah, that's right. And I guess that's where, for me, especially with the chronic pain side of stuff, because like I said, you get some patients that, you're aware that they're not exercising, they've got a really, really nasty plantar fascia pain or an Achilles pain. The footwear and the orthotics is probably the best solution for them. I'll still start them with some very, very, very basic exercises they can do, but just being able to, over time, formulate that idea in their head that, hey, look, there's actually more I can do, and this isn't just a band-aid for my pain. I can actually get on top of my pain and improve my quality of life as well. And that's how you can sort of convert those patients into a exercise program or a strength program, or they might come back and go, I've actually been dealing with some back pain, I've been dealing with some hip pain over the years, what more can I do for this? And you go, all right, physio, done. There's a consult with a physio, and all of a sudden, obviously, physio is very, very exercise driven. So they start to have a few little exercises, a few stretches for that. They get on top of that pain, and just being able to then in your head go, well, hang on, I'm not in pain anymore. I can go for a walk, or I can go play with my kids down at the local park, or whatever it might be, and just start to change people's mindsets around that pain barrier to what they might be able to do.
And so much of it, I mean, I'm thinking about the chat that I had with Nida, a couple of podcasts ago about, he was talking about exercise and, being advocates for exercising more and building and making change. And we sort of don't think of ourselves as that, but that's kind of, I mean, it all just gets melded in, right? Where it's like, well, someone, and they haven't exercised, they don't have the experience, they haven't thought about it, they aren't doing this sort of stuff. And you're just there finding that opportunity, educating them, providing them opportunities, building that relationship, and eventually you could get them in and do more. And the focus is not on them as like, we need to get them back for strengthening. I've definitely been a part of a business that's like, we just got to offer everything and a package and a deal and get people. But it's like, well, what do people need at that point in time? And some people just need time. Some people need relationship. Some people need a place where they can come to, and then you help them through.
That's right. I think talking to the amount of people I've spoken to, and especially some of the chronic pain we see, a big barrier is people haven't necessarily come from a background of sports, or they haven't come from a background of exercise. So they've spent most of their life, participating in school sports as a kid, but as soon as school finishes, that's it. They've never really done much in terms of gym or yoga or Pilates. So when they have the opportunity to come in, or not the opportunity, but they come in to see us with pain, we can start to open up that opportunity for them as well, and taking away that sort of embarrassment or the feeling that they don't know how to exercise, they don't know how to do things, and just sort of forming a little community around that person to go, hey, look, let's try this today. Let's go for a walk on the treadmill, or let's just try holding a few weights and just see how you feel. So yeah, it is really, really exciting when you sort of get those patients that have come in just purely for one issue, but then 3-4 months down the track, they come in and they're exercising, they're wanting to go, oh, I actually want to do this now. I want to start training for a half marathon or a marathon, or it's just open up opportunities for them, being able to get on top of one pain.
I guess this is kind of like a really nice encapsulations of so much what we've talked about. It's relationships, it's the business practice, it's and investments. It's about seeing things differently, bringing in context, seeing that you can help people differently. You think about all the skills that you can develop, and we're no longer just treating someone with a specific thing. It's having a wider skill set, a wider knowledge base that you can use to then help that person. And that might just be providing them with on the spot care to develop a relationship and opportunities, and then having also the other skill set to then actually increase their exercise, get them doing something different, training them in a way that they haven't been trained before, rather than come in, here's your orthotic, or come in, here's your insert X treatment, and here's your insert X outcome, and that's what you pay for. It's very transactional.
Yeah, so and to be fair, this actually probably leads back to my whole crux as a sports pod, where the gymnasts and the ballet dancers, for example, they've never had much of a weight program at all. They've done all the body weight stuff, all the resistance band work, but we've been able to take that and develop more of a footy, soccer, rugby program, get them doing weights, get them stronger a bit more through weight training, and we've seen the benefits of that. So all of a sudden they're fitter, they're stronger, they're able to do more routines, they're able to do more skills, they can jump higher, they can last a longer period of time during a gymnastics event. And then same with the footy boys, being able to incorporate all the foot and ankle specific exercises and all the barefoot stuff we've done with the footy boys. I've got a few boys that come in, they've started doing Pilates. I'm like, cool, you wouldn't expect to do. And it's funny because I always keep track of. I love the AFL, I love the footy, and you often see some people that have been through some chronic soft tissue injuries that have done gymnastics, or they've done some ballet training, or they've done some dance specific stuff. And they've reaped the benefits of it because it's a different type of training for a certain body type. So being able to have that cross training between footy, between dance has been awesome as well. And I've sort of seen the benefits of being able to translate both into each other.
Yeah, and I think that's. I mean, we've got the Olympic studies. I think it was done through the IOC, but we've got the studies that show early sports specialization is more Olympians are people that have had more experiences, more exposure to lots of different movement patterns, lots of different types of exercise, because exactly they pick up all those different skills. When we do strength and conditioning training as the accreditation pathway for a coach, so much of it is developing athletic development, and it's going on how do we focus on foundational movements. And it's not so much that they need to know how to squat or how to deadlift or how to do any one specific movement for their sport, but it's teaching them something about how to move differently, making it consistent training, and that then opens up the ability to then go, well, I can now do weight training, or I can now do all of these different things safely, which will affect those other movements. And it's the same with lots of different other sports, whether it's a team sport or individual sport. So I think it's a really sort of spot on. Well, it's always nice to hear that you've got you're seeing what we see in evidence in practice, and we kind of go, oh shit, like it does actually relate, especially when we have, like we said, so much of the evidence that just focuses on RCTs, removing nuance and context, and so we don't always see it work. But we don't always see it, putting air quotes on work, but it's nice when we see that come through.
That's right. Yeah. So it's been fascinating. It's been really interesting for the last couple of years being able to work in that field and being able to actually be involved one-on-one with the athletes as well, and for me to see the benefits. It's a lot of out-of-the-box thinking as a podiatrist. It's a lot of how can I adapt this person to achieve what we want to achieve, because a lot of it is not just, obviously we get a few acute injuries still, but once the injury is resolved, how can we make you perform better as an athlete? How can we get you to the next level as an athlete? Because for us, we've got young girls that want to get to the Olympics. They want to compete for Australia. They want to go to compete on the world circuit for different World Cups and that sort of stuff. And so us as health practitioners can make a big difference by being able to introduce little exercises, little strength programs to help them develop along the way, and being able to have that, because a lot of, like for gymnastics for example, a lot of it is based on muscle memory, so you're getting that muscle to remember that exact same movement over 1,000 repetitions. But the problem is when an injury occurs, that muscle still works the exact same and it just can't cope with an injury. So being able to adapt that muscle, being able to adapt that joint, being able to teach it different patterns of movement has reaped big rewards for us.
And that's exactly it. It's having that focus. You can't just do the same thing that you've always done, or that you can't, as a business or as a practitioner, expect to get different types of referrals, lots of athletes and patients doing the same thing that you've always done. It's adapting around that individual, adapting around their goals, and developing the experience and the knowledge to
That's
actually
right.
be a useful person to that
That's
that
right.
patient.
That's absolutely right.
Well, this has been a fantastic discussion. I've really enjoyed talking, and it's been interesting to hear someone's experience, sort of not only with my own, but also just hearing a different side of sort of from your
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah, that's
Is this,
right. That's been awesome.
as sort of before we end, I want to ask if there's anything else that you think would be worth mentioning about our discussion, questions that I maybe haven't asked, or probably the biggest thing is going to be if someone is listening, especially, I'd say early career podiatrists, or even, other disciplines, what advice you might give them, if there's anything else that we haven't talked about.
Don't get disheartened if someone says no, basically. So if you want to go and speak to a sports team, or want to speak to a coach or an athlete, it's going to take time. It's going to take time to build your reputation, to build your brand, to build your name in that community. It's just persisting at it, and it sometimes takes a lot of time. For me, I think I'm a very, very friendly person, and I just keep talking a lot, so people don't have a chance to say no to me too often. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is making yourself available. I think a lot of people forget that it's not just all about money. It's not just about earning as much coin as possible. If you want to work in that field, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of sacrifice as well. But you do eventually reap the rewards of it, and you just start to build up a name for yourself across that community and across the wider community as well. So I think early on, if you want to go out and hit it, go out and talk to people, email people. Face-to-face meetings is always the best. Don't be afraid to go and spend some time at a club or at a community space, and spend some time doing some quick assessments. Talk to them about their injuries. Come up with a quick management plan for them. We've just done it recently with the Gymnastics club, where we went and spent, I think, 4 hours on a Saturday between me and the physio, and we screened it would have been about 40 girls in that time, and then went away and actually created some very brief management plans for them. Email that to the coach, email that to the parents. We inform the athlete on the day what they need to do to help improve their injuries, or so get rid of their injuries. And we've seen the rewards of that within 2-3 weeks. We've had some of the parents email back saying, awesome, like, we didn't expect this type of service. Let's come in and actually speak to you. And all of a sudden you start to see their other daughters or their other sons or the family themselves. So yeah, I think a lot of it is, the biggest thing is, as a new grad or a person wanting to go out and do what I'm doing, speak to people and spend time, sacrifice a bit of time to do it.
Brilliant. I guess I'd add to that, and so much of what you're talking about just reminds me of the book Pink, To Sell Is Human, because so much of it is just about, if you're going to be out there, you want opportunities, you want to be out there, it's just being buoyant is what he calls it, just being out there, weathering all the rejections and just focusing in on, again, our whole discussion, which has been not on trying to sell someone on something, but it's just trying to show value. This is
That's
what I
right.
can do, this is how I can do it, and that's the whole system.
That's right, and work alongside whoever's there. Like, I've had a chance to work alongside the physios and the sports trainers at the footy club. They've seen the value of me being there. They've seen the value of me being there on game day, actually looking after some of the boys on the boundary as well. And so that's just opened up more opportunities for me for the coming season to spend even more time down there, and build an even bigger brand for myself on Instagram as well. So don't try and kick people out from positions they already hold. Try and work alongside existing people, and help other practitioners see the value of actually having you on board as part of their team. Because at the end of the day, we're not here to fight against each other. Physios, podiatrists, chiros, whatever it might be, we've all got the same goal. We want to try and get people better. So there's no point trying to kick people out of a role that you want. Find a way to try and work with them, trying to find a way to work alongside them, and build from there.
Brilliant. Love it. Well, thanks for joining me. So
Thanks,
where can people, you talk about social media, where people find you?
So I'm Perth Sports Podiatrist on Instagram.
Beautiful. And anywhere else people will follow you, or is it just Instagram?
I'm on LinkedIn as well. I think it's just Angelo Vehlo on LinkedIn. But other than that, that's pretty much all I've got. That's my social footprint.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for joining me, and thanks everyone. For those who've made it this far in, thanks for listening. I've been Alex Murray. You can find me as well on Instagram, Facebook, X, wherever, as the Rehab Podiatrist. And we'll chat next time.